Calibration is about how we judge our ability or performance on a task and use that judgment to move forward. Failure to make realistic and accurate judgments about your performance could have dire consequences for your grades. Being a good calibrator is therefore a key ingredient for your progress. It is an issue if you are overconfident. The Dunning-Kruger effect is that low-performing students tend to overestimate both their ability and test performance, and this is a problem because it's likely they will stop studying an area too soon before they've truly mastered it. To become better at calibrating and thus achieve better in exams, you need to ensure that you can make accurate predictions about your performance. So if you're doing exam subjects, frequent testing is probably the best way to establish what you really do know versus what you thought you knew. Use the tried and tested strategies covered in these videos, free recall quizzes and flashcards. Whether you're doing exams or coursework, you need to make constructive use of the feedback given. Go through your previous assessments and make a record sheet like this of things your teacher has identified as areas for improvement. These are the things on which you should be focusing a lot of your time. Implement a spaced practice calendar where you'll schedule revisits of these areas a number of times before the final exam or deadline. Use a variety of resources to verify your understanding is accurate. Ask your teacher to check what you're using to study, and consult the latest mark schemes when you answer exam questions. Don't assume you're right. Just because something feels right or familiar, it's not always a reliable indicator of your learning. Don't believe too much in any gains that you might have seen from cramming. Remember that this will have only been a short-term test and you need to think long-term. This means you should avoid dropping material entirely just because you've got it right once or twice. If you're using flashcards, then try this method. Make 5 piles, or better still boxes, one for each of the testing intervals shown here. Every time you recall the information on one card correctly, move it to the next box on the right. This way you're forced to revisit material at appropriate intervals. The software app Anki is free to download and uses the same principle. It tests you on the flashcards that you've made at your most optimal times. Studying in groups with your peers can be really useful for calibration. Take turns to set a question or task and all complete it separately. Then come together and debate whose response is best before checking against an objective measure, such as a mark scheme, model answer, or your teacher. Dunning and Kruger have done many experiments demonstrating the link between poor calibration and poor performance. They've consistently shown that when you first study a subject, gross overconfidence is likely. But here's the key, with increasing training and experience we can all become better at estimating our abilities. In one experiment, university students who performed bottom on a logical reasoning test had grossly overestimated their performance. However, when half of those students were given training in logic and then asked to re-estimate how well they'd performed on the first test, those who received the training were much more accurate estimators of the number of questions they got right. The ones who didn't receive such training, however, remained overconfident, so training and experience is key. Most of us are subject to fluency illusions. This is where we mistake recognition of something for actually possessing knowledge of it, and it is the very thing that can lead us to become overconfident before a test. It's likely that the worst performing students are actually those who are not using the best study strategies, as outlined in these videos, and these students are therefore most likely to be succumbing to these illusions of knowing. Dunning and Kruger suggest that we simply aren't used to negative feedback in daily life because people don't like to deliver bad news. So when we do receive it, it's uncomfortable and we seek to explain it. The most self-preserving explanation for poor performance is to blame the tools, i.e. the exam, the teacher, rather than ourselves. It's only when you take responsibility, however, for your shortcomings that you are likely to make an effort to adapt and ultimately are more likely to progress.